Hi, I'm Jonsara Ruth. I am co-founder and co-director of Parsons Healthy Materials Lab, Parsons School of Design. We have a lab called Healthy Materials Lab. I'll tell you more about that. And I am also the founding principal of Salty Labs, which is a design collective and my design practice, headquartered in Brooklyn. I always love to draw, like many designers, and I love to make things and imagine new places. I even remember redrawing my elementary school plan. I studied architecture. And then much later, I realized that the intersection of the design of objects and the design of spaces was really interior design, because it's about the whole space, but it's also about the objects in the space that create the whole experience, the entire experience. And so that's where I've found comfort, kind of in the interior experience. I was traveling to factories overseas, and I would get up early in the morning, and I think I don't know if I told you this before, but I would get up early in the morning and try to go for a run or do something before we went to the factory that day. And one morning I woke up I was in China, in southern China, and I went out for a run, and it was really hard to breathe. And I looked at the sky, and the sun was coming up, and the sky was kind of green. And I went what is going on? And then it all kind of came together. I was like, oh, I'm designing this furniture, which is being produced in a factory that's a few miles away, that's creating this pollution, that's making it hard for me to breathe, which means all the other people who live here full time are having a hard time breathing too. And then I just, my stomach sunk, and I just thought, oh my goodness, I don't think I can contribute to this anymore. And I had to find another way to do things. And so, I live in New York, and thankfully there's a lot of design that happens there. And so I joined a small startup that was just getting off the ground, and they were looking for somebody to design children's furniture for mass production that was healthy. And I thought, I want to design green. My language was, I want to design green furniture. I want it to be, sustainable. And I knew that I wanted a lower carbon footprint. I knew that I wanted to make it closer to where people used it. I wanted to produce it in America, and I didn't want to produce the green skies. But I didn't know so much about healthy. And so then I joined them, and for 6 years, I was completely, again, immersed in a new field, which was really bringing toxicology into the design field, which I didn't know anything about. So we had the opportunity to start a design research lab, which really focused on the health angle, health and materials, and how it affects people's bodies. And I thought, wow, this is really a cool opportunity. And so I stepped away from the interior design program and launched this lab with my colleague, Allison Mears. And we received a grant, which was not only to promote and build awareness of healthy materials for designers and architects, but to radically transform affordable housing to be healthier through the use of healthier materials. And so the application of and bringing healthier materials to the homes of people who don't usually get to choose their own materials of their home. They're people who are kind of forced to live in housing that's subsidized, and other people choose what they live with. The chemical that's added to the plastic to make that happen is called phthalates. Those phthalates are very similar in the molecular structure to our own hormones, which is really weird. They're microscopic. So if they get into our body, then we have, in our body, we have hormone receptors. And those receptors see that phthalate and say, oh, yes, you're a hormone. And then grab onto it and bring it into the bodily system, not knowing that it's not a hormone. And so our body mistakes these chemicals that are like in shower curtains for our hormone, and then changes our whole biological system. So like all of these, so, diseases like autism or asthma, or even this like ADHD, this attention deficit disorder, or these neurodevelopment disorders, are linked to these endocrine disruptors that our hormone system says, oh, you're like me. And then, so if you look at the increase in these diseases in children over the past 50 years or 70 years, and you look at the increase in chemical production, it's in the same parabolic curve. We can use stone countertops without sealers. Everybody would be in much better shape, because that sealer comes into your food, and it's an endocrine disruptor. So why would you put it near your food? So, but these little steps like would change. Like if all interior designers just said to all the stone manufacturers, like, we don't want to use stone sealer, we don't mind a little staining, or our customers will clean it up. It would be just, we would move a step closer. That might sound ridiculous to people. Maybe and if it's so ridiculous, then use a stainless steel countertop, or use, a wood countertop, or use, something else. So I think that's one step. We can change. I think that's the main thing that I think I learned from the pandemic, and maybe I feel like everybody learned, is that we changed radically over 2 weeks time. Like within 2 weeks of March 2020, we all shifted the way we worked. And it didn't really, I don't know, obviously supply chain issues, but for a lot of office people, it didn't actually change the productivity part so much. So I feel, and even for schools, like I would never have thought I could teach online, over Zoom like this. But we found ways that were better, like activities that were better in this way. So I guess that all is to say that human behavior is really the thing that needs to change. And if we can say an induction stove actually heats up much, much quicker, your pans will heat up faster, your egg will fry better. We can change our behavior and our expectations pretty easily. And that's, I think, what we learned. I think I learned anyway, that human behavior can change much more quickly than I ever thought it could. We have a ticking clock on the human species. It's never been so clear. One of the projects that we've been working on at Healthy Materials Lab at Parsons was designing and supporting the build of a hemp lime home. So what that means was it was a renovation of a small wood structure in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and a community organization called Dawn decided that they thought we kind of met because we had the same thought at the same time, which was the agricultural land around this town of Newcastle could produce the materials that would be used to build the buildings. And so they grew hemp, and then they're in the process of setting up facilities to process the hemp so that it then can be used mixed with lime or limestone to make an insulation, to make the wall of this building. And they said, let's try it. Let's try a prototype. And so for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been working with them to actually build this home that has hemp walls, hemp and lime walls. And, similarly to my compost heap as a kid, like when that building gets torn down at some point, that whole wall can go back into the earth and nourish the soil to grow more hemp. And, that circular system, I think, is really so promising, so much more promising than the Shell cracker plant down 30 miles away. There's a giant plastics plant that's going to produce polymer and then produce vinyl siding and produce all this stuff in those walls, which will never go away. I mean, our landfills in this world are getting so big, people are living in them. So these are two options. We could go this option where we can grow our food and grow our buildings, or we could go this option where we, produce chemicals where we live and then disrupt our endocrine system. So as interiorists, we have this ability to determine what surrounds a person in their life that then will determine their entire well-being. It'll determine their physical well-being as well as their emotional and psychological well-being.